security concerns in the British Virgin Islands following Hurricane Irma, and in sport, confirmation that West Indies women's management team has been sacked. I'm Ricardo Roberts, and this is Caribbean in 10 for Tuesday, September 12th. I'll be back with the details in just a moment.
What made you want to start dealing with people's financial responsibilities? Like, why?
You know what, that's actually...
Is it stressful?
It is stressful, but I have to say probably the biggest problem, the biggest source of maybe stress for me is knowing that that person does have something that they can do about their problem, but for whatever reason they're not taking action. And it might be fear, it might be just overwhelm. That's why I'm there.
I want to give the audience a context in which we are carrying on this conversation to say that the trading relations with Britain and by extension Europe are very important within a particular context. So we're dependent on trade with everybody, right? But Britain is a particular kind of relationship. Expand on that a little bit for the audience.
Security issues in the British Virgin Islands following Hurricane Irma's passage are creating concern for one of its neighboring British overseas territories. Premier Alden McLaughlin of the Cayman Islands says there are massive security issues in the BVI with looting and robbing and prisoners on the loose. And he says until that is resolved, it will be difficult to carry out any humanitarian missions there. Cayman Islands is being used by the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office in coordinating hurricane relief efforts to British overseas territories affected by Irma. Now, Premier McLaughlin said an armed police unit from his country as well as additional officers from Bermuda were being sent into the BVI along with 100 UK Marines and 55 UK police officers to boost security. Meanwhile, St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chastanet said there has been a request for his country to accept 3 prisoners from another British overseas territory, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and he says his government is working with the British authorities to accommodate that request. Guyana is working on plans to evacuate nationals in islands affected by Hurricane Irma. Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo also announced a contribution of $50,000 as the first donation towards assisting Caribbean countries. We get more in this report from Capital News.
As a member of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, Guyana continues to examine the situation, and based on a collective response, the government has pledged further contribution to relief efforts.
This morning we made a commitment without prejudice to any other commitments in material terms that we would give towards the CDEMA fund a contribution of 50,000 United States dollars.
Prime Minister also stated that the government remains concerned over displaced Guyanese living in affected states. He said an evacuation protocol is being examined.
We needed to map out protocols and strategies that would send a very clear message that Guyana stands ready to assist the collective efforts towards all Caribbean countries that are affected. But in particular, we have Guyanese nationals in some of these islands, Barbuda, for example, that had been almost totally flattened, and I understand most of the inhabitants have been airlifted to Antigua. Question is whether they would want to come home, even temporarily.
CARICOM Chairman Dr. Keith Mitchell is today leading a delegation to some of the islands battered by Hurricane Irma. The Grenada Prime Minister is accompanied by CARICOM Secretary General Erwin Larocque, as well as Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, Ronald Jackson. A statement from the Office of the Prime Minister said this is the first of several visits in an expression of solidarity and support to regional brothers and sisters impacted by the Category 5 storm. The delegation's first stop will be the BVI, followed by Anguilla. The team will then overnight in Antigua and visit Barbuda early tomorrow before returning to Grenada. Stay with us. Your Midday Sport is next.
Starting next season, the cars are going to look a whole lot different. And the performance of Honda's Indy cars should be a lot better as well. IndyCar and Dallara coming up with an all-new package of bodywork and aero for the DW12 chassis. All teams and all manufacturers will use the new package. The car carries a more traditional IndyCar silhouette. Oriol Servia is handling the test driving for Honda. He's plenty pleased with the new package.
It's only aerodynamics, but it's quite different. And also weight distribution. We lost the rear bumper, so...
The track layout in the Salina Torda is very special. We start off through the Salina Torda gate, then a U-turn and back through. Then through the Conrad gate and another U-turn. Then a long high-speed straight to the amphitheatre gate. That's where we fly in through the Speed S and come out here. Here you've got to be real careful not to hit the lights.
Welcome back. It's now time for sport. Cricket West Indies has confirmed the sacking of the West Indies women's management team, which oversaw the Caribbean side's wretched campaign at the recent Women's World Cup in England. In a release yesterday, CWI said it would be setting up a new management support structure for the team ahead of Sri Lanka Women's Tour of the Caribbean starting October 4. Recent media reports suggest head coach Vasper Drakes, along with Ezra Mosley and Stuart Williams, and operations manager and Brown John had been removed from their positions. Hendy Springer has been named as head coach and former West Indies head coach Gus Logie as his assistant in an interim management team. Physiotherapist Oba Gulston has been replaced by Ariane Manga, while fitness coordinator Hector Martinez-Charles has been replaced by Cheyenne Cooper. Gary Bell will take over from Trent Sargent as data analyst. The CWI release said the process would start with the search for a new head coach, and an interim management team will be in place for the short term. And staying with cricket, Yorkshire captain Gary Ballance expects West Indies opener Craig Brathwaite to excel during his brief stint with the club in the English County Championship. The out-of-favour English batsman witnessed Brathwaite's ability to close up 2 years ago when the Barbadian right-hander carved out a century in the second test of England's tour of the Caribbean. And after the 24-year-old's heroics at Headingley 2 weeks ago when he struck 134 and 95 as West Indies stunned England by 5 wickets on the final day of the second test of the just concluded 3-match tour, Ballance was left even more upbeat. He described Brathwaite as a gusty player and an asset to the team, especially in the conditions in London. Brathwaite has emerged as one of West Indies' leading batsmen in recent years, scoring 600s and averaging 36 in the opening slot. He will play the final 2 matches of the season, replacing Australian Shaun Marsh. His first match will be against Warwickshire, Yorkshire's final home fixture, which bowls off on September 19. That's Caribbean in 10. Join us again at 6:30 for Caribbean Newsline. Good afternoon.